Hi, I'm Mark Lynn, and I'm the roommate coach. This is KZZH 96.7 FM in Eureka, California. Today is January 9th, 2017, and this will be episode 13 of the Roommate Coach. In this episode for the new year, I will briefly summarize just what I mean by the roommate coach, what the roommate coach is, and what I intend to accomplish. I'm also going to talk somewhat about my plans for the show for the coming year. And then, as time permits, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the principles I advocate as the roommate coach, how those apply to other issues in life as well. So it's not just roommates that can benefit from some of the things I talk about. I'm basically talking about ways roommates, or anyone for that matter, can get along better, which is the reason for my motto, which is world peace, one roommate at a time. I really appreciate station KZZH, a fairly new station here in Eureka. They've been brought to the air last year, a few months ago now, by the great folks over at Access Humboldt here in Eureka. You can reach them at accesshumboldt.net. And if you'd like to leave any feedback for me, you can do so at theroommatecoach.com, or you can leave voicemail anytime, 24/7, at area 707-362-8000. That's 707-362-8000. Okay, so I'll start at the beginning. A reasonable question for someone calling himself the roommate coach would be, what is a roommate coach? A roommate coach is very much like other coaches, sports coaches, career coaches, in that someone who basically shows you how to do something that you would like to do, shows you ways to do it better, how to improve a skill. I guess it's more of a semantic thing, but there's obviously a big overlap between coaching and teaching. I kind of think of teaching as learning knowledge as opposed to coaching, which is more developing a skill, although I don't think the semantics are really that crucial. But that's what I intend to do as the roommate coach, is show people how to do better at the task of being roommates. One of many ways that I've been summarizing what I'm doing is I say that I'm showing roommates ways they can get along better. Now this is important, but it's also important to understand what I mean by get along and what I don't mean. What I don't mean is just keeping the peace by letting someone pretty much get their way about everything. No, what I mean by getting along is creating an environment where everyone has an equal shot at getting what they want out of their life, basically. And really, it's pretty simple. It's just a matter of people keeping their word and not interfering with each other. Pretty much known at one time as the golden rule, just doing to others the way we'd like to be done ourselves. Sounds corny, but it's still pretty accurate. One way I like to summarize things is to say that the way to have a great roommate is to be a great roommate. So this is the task I've taken on as the roommate coach, is to show people ways to have a really great roommate or roommates by being a great roommate. All right, next on my list for today is a little discussion about my plans for the coming year. Now this is likely to be a work in progress. I will probably include something about my future plans in many of my future posts, because as of now, some of the plans are kind of tentative, still working out details. But in any event, I can get started. One thing I've already begun doing is improving my audio. I think it was the last show where I started using my new microphone. And I don't think I had everything connected just right in the last show. I think this one, hopefully, is where things begin to sound the way they should. If anyone has been able to listen to a number of my shows, you might be able to tell whether there is, in fact, any improvement. I'm listening and playing back some of the earlier ones, and it sounds like it's getting better to me, but of course I am far from entirely objective, although I certainly will try to be. In any case, I will do everything I can to keep making the audio as good as it can possibly be so that you can really focus on what I'm saying and not the quality of the audio. Another significant plan I have for the coming year, hopefully starting relatively soon as I can arrange it, is to begin doing some interviews so that when you're listening to the show, you won't be stuck listening to just me droning on. So rather, there will be at least one, maybe more than one in some cases. But the roommate topic, since it touches on something really essential to all of us, which is housing and sharing expenses, there's just so much about the topic that is so important and touches so many people's lives that I think it's going to be a fairly simple matter to come up with any number of potential interviewees and topics, things to discuss. Now, how good a job I do of convincing the interviewees to, in fact, let me interview them, though, that's what I'll have to find out. But that's my plan, and I'm planning on getting started on that as soon as possible. So hopefully there will be some interviews and some, by definition, more interesting, more varied shows starting fairly soon. I will certainly keep everybody posted on that. And speaking of keeping you posted, another thing it just now occurred to me that I should start doing is listing plans for future shows on the website, on theroommatecoach.com. I've already begun getting the shows, some of the shows, the audio onto YouTube to make the prior shows available. But I guess the broader issue is creating more of a connection between the shows and the website and YouTube and all the various ways that we have to get information. Another plan I have in mind for the show that's similar to the last one about interviews is just different kinds of show formats, hopefully including additional voices, additional talent, I guess you could say. A specific example of this I have in mind is figuring out how to put on almost little skits. It's one thing to tell you how to approach a certain situation. It's another thing entirely to show you. So I'm hoping to be able to, at least for part of the shows, part of the time, to be able to bring in some additional people, additional voices, and maybe create brief little skits. Or I don't think that they'll be terribly lengthy at first, so it would be a stretch to call them a play or anything, but maybe little playlets, just demonstrations, illustrations of the principles that I suggest here. And in conjunction with that, another similar type thing that might be enjoyable and somewhat entertaining as well as useful is to have outside people actually telling their stories. So real live case histories, again, spoken by the individuals themselves rather than just me. So this would all be under the category of modifications and additions to the show format itself. And just to clarify on this last, I'm not talking about just people talking about roommate problems. It would be in conjunction with my own analysis afterwards as to possible ways to approach a situation like that. And there's plenty of things on on the internet already about just roommate problems. There's no shortage of finding those. That's part of why I became the roommate coach. All right, well, those are some of the plans I have in mind for the roommate coach going forward, as they say. Here it is with New Year 2017 just having begun, and I will add to my list of plans as time progresses and as some ideas I have maybe begin to materialize. But that's about it as of right now. You're listening to The Roommate Coach. This is episode 13 about plans for the coming year. And this is KZZH 96.7 FM in Eureka, California. The motto here at The Roommate Coach is World Peace, one roommate at a time. Mankind has been talking about, you might even say dreaming about, world peace for so many generations now that it probably seems a little unlikely that some guy on the radio is going to all of a sudden figure it out. And I'm realistic. I agree with that. It's pretty unlikely in terms of the overall world. But as I like to point out, your world is not the overall world necessarily. It's where you live to a great extent. So if it's possible to increase peace within your home between yourself and those you live with, then in that way of looking at it, we really have increased world peace. So that's why I really like my motto. Depending on the interpretation, it can really have some possibility. World peace, one roommate at a time, starting with your world. Now in my world, the world of the roommate coach, I always like to get feedback. So I've made it easy for you to do that in a couple of different ways. You can go to the website, theroommatecoach.com. On the home page, there is a contact link, and you can leave feedback there for me if you like. Or if you'd like to leave a voicemail anytime, 24/7, you can do so at area 707-362-8000. That's 707-362-8000 to leave feedback for the roommate coach. Okay, I'm going to say a little bit now about some different areas of our lives in which the principles that I discuss as the roommate coach can make a difference. In other words, I believe that the things I am recommending can benefit lots of situations, not just the roommate situation. Now, interestingly enough, I had a personal example of one of my concepts just a few minutes ago in the process of doing this recording. One of my core principles, I guess you'd say, is the fact that we all need to keep in mind that our actions can and do affect others. And one of the problems with roommates is that they frequently, some of them anyway, will frequently just forget or seemingly ignore the impact that some of the things they do, some of the effects their actions have on their roommates. Well, this doesn't just happen between roommates, as I'm sure we all know. One place it happens is within corporations, such as technology corporations. Many of us anyway, are quite familiar with computer aggravations caused by, apparently, people that design the software just not stopping to think of the impact on the people using the computer. This is old news for, I suspect, millions of people out there. Well, in the course of making this recording, I record these shows to a computer. I use Audacity, open source software, to make the initial recording, and then I add bumper music and things after the fact. In the process of doing this, I noticed my computer was all of a sudden running really, really slowly and sluggishly. Well, I took a look at my processes. I keep a process monitor open for that reason. And it turned out the computer manufacturer had put on some kind of, what is the term? Some kind of computer health software, and it was set to just turn on of its own accord at any time and start hogging system resources. No indication whatsoever to me as the user, and the person who paid for the computer. And this kind of thing happens all the time, and it's certainly not limited to the computer industry. It happens probably all over the world in one way or another. And again, I know the world is not going to wake up one day and start doing things differently because of little old me, but I will repeat, world peace, one roommate at a time. For however many people there are that are willing to start thinking in terms of the impact their actions have on others and perhaps make some changes, that would make a difference. And this kind of aggravation that I experienced, and as I say, that millions of others likely experience, well, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, but it's nice to think that it could be reduced. So, okay, realistically, we know that's not going to change, but my point here is that the principle is exactly the same. The roommate who somehow ignores the fact that having a really loud telephone conversation in the middle of the night when the other roommate is sound asleep, maybe on the other side of the room, is in principle doing the same kind of inconsiderate thing that the software executive does, who goes ahead and says, yeah, sure, set the utility to turn on in the middle of whatever they're doing. Principle is the same, so if we could change the principle in one place, eventually we could change it in the other. Now, how long eventually takes, of course, that remains to be seen. Another area, and I dare say a very important area, where the principles I speak about here as the roommate coach, where they can help a lot, is at work or in the process of forming and maintaining your career. Actually, there are a number of reasons why maintaining good roommate relationships can have a big impact on your career, a positive impact. One of them is the simple fact of maintaining as many good connections as possible. It's kind of ironic, as crowded as our world tends to be, especially in the big cities, that it's relatively difficult to make and maintain really good connections for a lot of people. Well, the people you live with are obviously pretty prime candidates for forming connections with, since you're spending a lot of time around them. And having a good network, having good connections, having people that know you well and think well of you, is one of the cardinal rules in forming and advancing in most careers. But it goes beyond that. There's really quite a bit more that the process of maintaining good roommate relationships can do even more for your career, and I'll explain why. Getting interactions between people to work relatively well for both parties or for all parties is probably one of the biggest challenges we face. So much of the time, an exchange will go well for one but not for the other, or vice versa. But figuring out how to get the exchange to go well for both, in other words, I do the best I can for you, you do the best you can for me. Now, that might sound simplistic and maybe even naive, because there's so many examples of it going the other way. But the reality is that the relationships that are based on a principle like that are the ones that work well and keep working. So developing this kind of relationship is a skill. And it's a skill that can be learned and maybe improved, maybe even fine-tuned in the process of getting things to work as well as possible with your roommates. The neat thing is, once you have that skill, you'll be able to use it in other contexts as well, where you're around people, such as at work. It would be difficult to overestimate the importance of the quality of your relationships with people you're working with. The goal being, of course, to get those relationships as close as possible to the I'll do the best I can for you and you do the best you can for me kind of relationship. That's the ideal. So this is also the ideal for a roommate relationship. I think it's the ideal of just about any kind of interaction, any kind of exchange between people. So once you develop that skill, which you'll need to do to make the most of your roommate relationships, then you'll have it for other important things, and we all know that work is important. Career is super important. You've been listening to The Roommate Coach, episode 13. My name is Mark Lynn. I'm the Roommate Coach. This is KZZH 96.7 FM in Eureka, California. The motto here is World Peace, one roommate at a time. KZZH has been brought to the air here in Eureka by Access Humboldt. You can reach them at accesshumboldt.net. The bumper music is called Rollin' at 5, and that's by Kevin MacLeod. I hope you're enjoying these various episodes of The Roommate Coach. I know it's a little hit and miss at this point, just getting started. Hopefully I'll be able to have a regular time slot at some point. I will certainly announce that if and when that occurs. But if you're enjoying the show, or if you're not, if you have any criticisms or comments or concerns or ideas for future shows, anything at all, any kind of feedback would be welcome. You could leave that at the website, which is theroommatecoach.com. There is a contact link on the homepage. You can leave feedback on there. You could also leave a voicemail anytime, 24/7, at area 707-362-8000. That's 707-362-8000 for 24/7 voicemail type feedback. And when you do leave feedback, or if you do, if you can, you leave the episode number of the show that you're referring to. That'll help me understand your comments and place them in context of the show you're referring to. So once again, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've been enjoying the show. I've certainly enjoyed creating them, and I intend to continue in the future. So keep listening here at KZZH, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon. So long.